What is up, y'all? Dr. Mike Trubetskov here, the mad scientist of metal. Today, I want to talk about something really fun and do a bit of a mental exercise while doing the new Metal Myth Busters video, which I should have kept up with a while ago, so... Bit late, mate, bit late. That is, let's break one of the myths down. Recording metal at home is just as good as recording in the studio. Little bit of a disclaimer. As biased as I am today here in my studio, telling you to record in the studio, I actually think that there are cases when recording at home is beneficial and you get equally great results, if not better. If you are experienced enough, recording at home may be equally good and save up your budget. But today, I want to focus on certain advantages of coming into the studio and committing to the process externally, the old school way, if I may, and some of the advantages that are not that obvious. And I want to show you what sort of value you're getting by coming to the studio and recording in there. Final disclaimer. This is not about the gear, the shiny things in Rex or the microphones, because I believe that these days we're so spoiled with technology that even with the most simplistic home setup, you can get great sound. So this is not about the gear. Rather, this is all about the skill. And that I'm gonna talk about in depth. All right, so the first advantage of recording your metal stuff in the studio is accepting the external ear and help. And that on its own is actually a challenge for some musicians. Letting someone else and trusting them as a producer or as a recording engineer to help you realize your heavy parts sometimes is hard because you have to trust the person enough. And sometimes it's just creating a bit of a tension which you need to overcome to be performing at your tops. In the case when you actually hit the studio and record with someone else, are finally able to just focus on the performance. When you perform in the guitar, you do not need to worry about your DIs clipping on the input or someone accidentally bumping into your guitar cab microphone so that your sound changes and you cannot access it anymore. You do not also need to worry about the takes, how to comp them, and you are much more free and more focused. And that's the one thing that you're the best at, the guitar, for instance, in this example. And if you're the best at it, you will perform better, rather than compared to your home recording setup, where you're at 50% of capacity playing, and then 50% of your capacity is spent with editing on the fly, finding the sound, etc., etc. And I'm guilty of that myself. I've been recording my own project, not trusting, as I mentioned before, not trusting anyone to help me. And I spent about 3 weeks recording 3 tracks. And I worried about the sound, the editing, the performance, and everything else. And one of the worst things was that I could not objectively judge how good my take was, because instead of critically listening to it and finding the flaws right as I go, I was playing. And that's simply not possible because your attention span is limited on what you do at the moment. So this is quite an advantage. And especially if you are not at professional level of experience performing, you can definitely benefit of this. My point number 2 is in the studio, it's much easier to find the sounds and commit to these on the go. That allows you to realize your sonic vision straight away as you go, because when you come with an idea which you are not sure about and you bounce it off to the producer, they either say, yes, that works, and they dial it in for you, and you may assess how suitable that is, or they would say that it is not applicable, and that will help you as well. Being that efficient and having an external perspective on your sonic ideas and the way to execute these through someone else is of immense help. I would benefit hugely if someone else could have helped me realize some of the ideas that I struggle with. Sometimes I know what to do on the go and it takes me 5 seconds. Other times, I just don't. And I spend hours of research, hours of Googling, whereas someone else just knows it because they've gained a different experience. It's all about the collaboration. And the more strong sides of different people are in the project, the better it flows and the bigger it becomes as well. So keep that in mind. Committing to the sounds on the way in, right on the day, on the session, allows you to avoid the paralysis of choice, which is, frankly, one of the worst things when it comes to recording your music. Paralysis of choice is when you can't decide whether the sound that you found is good or not, and then you leave it open for options. That is the case with guitar reamping. That is the case with color, when, say, you want to use a certain preamp or certain EQ settings or certain flavor. When you have someone else experienced with these tools responding to your questions just like that, yeah, that works, yeah, no, that doesn't, don't use this. When you experiment and try quickly and hear the difference and have the external input suggesting whether it is a good thing or not, that's just invaluable, man. You save so much time and your results obviously improve. And then again, having those colors applied to each track that you record obviously helps with the final sound. The gear itself allows maybe 5 to 10% improvement. Things become fuller, have the flavor, and those colors accumulate across the tracks. It's a good thing, but it's not about that anymore. It's much more about staying fresh and efficient throughout the session. And if you commit to those colors just like that, you don't need to overthink it. And if you do not need to overthink it, you can finally focus on the recording and the music and deliver your best without distractions. How important that is, just invaluable, man. Gear, cool, fun, toys, incredible. But if you spend too long on it, just worthless. That's why I'm saying skills. Also, one of the things that I learned when recording in the studio with someone else was a proper application of layers and how you can thicken up certain lines which you don't realize with an addition of certain way of performing it. Say, with guitar solos, you can play the same line but one octave down underneath. If you play it tightly enough, it will thicken up the sound and build it bigger. Similarly with vocal layers, it's almost an endless creative territory of adding certain harmonies, octaves, or just recording the same line over and over again to stack it and spread in the mix. It's rather endless. And again, it's very hard to judge when you don't have this experience yet. Number 4 is actually having some pressure and some deadlines. This is contradictory to an advantage of recording in the studio, but hear me out on this. I see a lot of projects which drag for years and years. I've seen some projects that drag for 3 to 5 years in terms of albums. Why did this happen? Because if we take Parkinson's law, which states that work drags for as long as you have to be completed. When you have all the time in the world for the project, guess what? It will expand and take it over. If you have deadlines, even artificial ones, these allow you to stay focused and even being a bit stressful. Sometimes they're beneficial for your productivity, and you get better results when you know that you cannot physically revisit the project. That's why hitting the studio on the day makes you more prepared. You are in a better performing shape because you've been preparing for this big day for a while, and you're at your top and peak capacity. Whereas when recording at home, it depends on your personality. Sometimes people are as good with it as well. However, in some cases, you just don't feel it this day, so you have to come to it back tomorrow, next week, next month, next year. And then this project drags, and all of your creativity all of a sudden has been sucked out in this wormhole of depression. Not cool, bro. And I've been there as well. So, deadlines help. And my final point, number 5, is gaining the experience. Recording in the studio allows you to see through the eyes of the producer. It allows you to understand, if you're attentive enough, how they approach any scenario. What do they do to record the guitar tightly? How do they approach vocal layers? How do they set up the mics? How do they run into their interfaces? How do they use EQ or compression? How do they talk with musicians? This is an invaluable experience, and it is much, much more than just receiving the final good quality product. My whole career has started after I hit the studio with Arkady Navajo in Moscow, and we recorded a full-length album, and he showed me exactly how to record guitars tightly. And I just saw it, and I was so inspired that I tried it next time I recorded. And guess what? Although I wasn't experienced enough and there were some flaws, my recordings became immensely better. And then, that was the foundational ground for me to start recording my own stuff and eventually stuff for other people. So this learning experience is as invaluable as you can understand. What do you guys and gals think about studio recordings? Have you had positive experience or negative experience? Let me know what your thoughts are. And if you have any questions for me, hit me up in the comment section. Until next time, take care.